Morning. It's the 6th of April. It's a Saturday morning. Moved to a new place, and that's why I didn't do a video last week. So, welcome to Charlie Reads and Reviews. So, I'm doing a wrap up of what I read in March and what I'm planning to read for April. So, I am now on 17 books. When I finished February, I was on 12. So I've kind of gone a little bit slow on so I brought down my average a little bit down to 5.5 a month from 6 a month. I'm still 2 books ahead of where I'm meant to be at this stage. So it's not a train smash, but it's something I want to rectify. So just a reminder, there are 3 reading challenges that I am completing this year. The first one's the Goodreads one, where I've said I'm going to read 60 books in 1 year. So I should be averaging about 5 books a month. So by being at 5.5, I'm ahead of where I'm meant to be. By the end of March, I was supposed to be at 15 books. I'm at 17, so I'm 2 books ahead of where I'm meant to be. For those of you who might be thinking, oh, wow, you're doing pretty well. For me, you have no idea how phenomenally well, astronomically better I'm doing than I was last year. Last year, my book reading challenge, my cat's going to disturb me a little bit here. As I mentioned in the past, I don't know what it is. Every time I'm on the phone, on video, something, she just needs attention. When I want to give her attention, I'm not giving it anywhere else. She ignores me. So just be wary that she might jump up here at some point. So last year, I had 50 books that I wanted to read. By the end of April, I had read 4 books. So to be at 17 by the end of March is absolutely phenomenal for me. And so I just don't want to get into the stage where last year, I think at October, I had to read 30 something books. October, November, and December. Sorry, let me just quickly close that so it doesn't make any more noise in the background. It's just my emails. All right, so the second challenge is I want to read 12 books by continental African authors. So last year I read a lot more African authors than I have in a very long time, but they were most of them were in the diaspora. This year I'm trying to read a lot of different books from a lot of different authors, but I specifically want to ensure that I read at least 12 books authored or penned by African authors who actually live on the African continent. At the moment, I am on 3 at the end of March. So I'm well on my way to where I'm meant to be by the end of December. This third challenge is YARC 2019 challenge, which I came across from a book blogger, Vicky Who Reads. She started with 2 other book bloggers, and in essence, YARC means Year of Asian Reading Challenge, YARC. So I thought that would be fun. I read this book, sorry, Forest of 1,000 Lanterns in February by Julie C. Dow. And I came across it because of Vicky Who Reads. And so I thought, well, I'm enjoying it. Asian, and I really liked the style of that book. So I thought, I don't mind joining this YARC 2019, being deliberate in that I'm reading Asian authors. So I am now on 2 out of the 12. I also wanted to do 12 for the year. And so I'm behind by 1 book, so I have to make up by reading 2 Asian authors in the month of February. Or at some point in time, I have to make up for that. For January's one, because I only started that challenge in February. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into a review of the books that I read in March 2019. So I only read 5 books. Actually, I read a graphic novel, but I'm not going to count it as the 6th book. I'm just going to stick to the 5. Of the 5, 3 of them were audio books, 2 were physical books. The 2 physical books here, the rest were audio books. So the first one, I did go into quite a bit in my last video. It was because I just finished it when I decided to record my wrap-up. And it was Creator Quest by Amir Questlove Thompson, who is the drummer from the group The Roots. I knew him from The Roots, but I'd also seen him on the Jimmy Fallon show. But I have no clue how creative he is. He is a songwriter, producer of music, but producers of shows as well. He has had restaurants and food experiences. He's written several other books, and he does creativity in so many shapes and forms. So that's why this book was so eye-opening for me. It was firstly how creative he is, but also he just talked about creativity from so many different angles and levels. Why he wrote this book, according to him, was that a lot of other creative books that he's come across are more about, this is what I did, this is how I am creative. And what he wanted to address were other things that aren't normally addressed in a lot of these creative books. And in terms of how to be creative books, I think the only one that really comes to mind for me was, I think it was Creativity Inc. It's a book that I listened to maybe about 2-3 years ago, which talks about the story of Pixar. And it's hailed as the ultimate creativity book out there. I listened to it, and the first half of the book was really interesting for me because it was talking about the founder, I forgot his name now, the founder of the book's journey from, business school into the arts, and then how Pixar started, and then how it blew up when he managed to convince Steve Jobs to come on board. Then the second half was talking about how they actually go through the creative process, and how, Toy Story and the likes came about, Monsters, Inc., etc. And it was really fascinating, but I don't know, it took me a while to get through that book, I have to admit. I think the narrator wasn't the best narrator for me. I don't think the narrator was the author. I think it was one of these voice actors, not necessarily an actor, but voice over people that they used. And when I was listening to Creative Quest, which was narrated by Questlove, and he also had music in the background. So it was really just a real great production of it. I really enjoyed it. What he touched on was really stuff that I haven't come across. Like, he would talk about things like, how do you collaborate with other people? What happens when collaboration goes wrong? So for example, everything has come together so well, but it just doesn't quite hit. So what do you do with that content that you've created and you've got nowhere to take it? He also addressed things like, what happens when this becomes a huge hit and one person gets all the recognition and the others don't, and how do you address those situations? He looked at what happens when you're bored and how do you become creative in those spaces. What happens when you hit a block? What happens when you create something really shit, etc. So it was just a really, really practical, enjoyable book about creativity, and he used a lot of case studies from his own experience and other people. So I really, really, really enjoyed it. So it gets 5 halos for me because there was nothing I would have improved about it. The only thing that I could say for me to improve is to buy the physical book. So I didn't buy the physical book. It's a book that I came across thanks to another book vlogger. Sorry, here's one of my cats. Another book vlogger, Left on Red. And she's American, so I didn't think we'd find it in a bookstore in South Africa. So I went straight to Audible and bought the audio version of it. But it's definitely a book that I definitely would love to get a physical copy. And I don't know if I'd read it every year, but certainly every 2 years. It's a book that I feel I could see something new every time I read it. So then book number 2 was Measure What Matters by John Doerr. I'm not sure how to pronounce his surname. I don't know if he still works for Google, but he, in this, how this book came to life was, he worked at IBM where they used this performance management tool called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results. O is Objectives, KR is Key Results. And when he moved to Google, he brought that measuring performance management tool. And when it comes to performance, not necessarily as an individual, but as a company to hit your big, hairy, audacious goals. And in this book, he basically explains how you can create objectives, how do you create key results, and then gave case studies of different businesses. A lot of them were tech companies based in the Silicon Valley, but he also had a couple of NPOs like Bono's organization, I've forgotten what it's called, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as examples. The case studies are really great. So I didn't really like the narrator of the main theoretical stuff. I don't know what it was. Again, I don't think it was the author who narrated it. I stand to be corrected though. And but I really enjoyed it when the case studies were narrated by a representative from the company that was in that case study. So it's really, really enjoyable from that perspective. I am giving it 4.5 halos because there was a lot of things that I missed because my mind would cake over whenever the main narrator would come on. So I would need a physical version of the book to read it again. There's a lot of practical stuff, just like, with the book Sprint. I don't know if you remember this book Sprint that I reviewed last month, that I read last month and reviewed a little bit last month. There's a lot of practical stuff in Measure What Matters that I could lose when I'm listening, because I usually listen when I drive, so I can't take down the notes and I can't go back and refer to it as easily as you can with a book. So definitely want to get a physical version of it. So I'm giving 4.5 halos because I don't know if it was, there's a lot of stuff that I missed out. So if I read it again, I can give a more informed review. And so I thought, that's a fair, I don't want to punish them unfairly because I listened instead of reading the physical book. But also when it comes to nonfiction, I don't know, they tend to be quite repetitive in how they're written. And I think it's because people think they need to write like 300 pages for nonfiction, and a 150-page book in nonfiction for me is perfectly fine as long as it's practical, useful, and everything is in there succinctly. All right, so the third book I listened to was called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy Work by Jason Fried, I don't know how to pronounce his surname. But oh my goodness, I love this person. He is the CEO and co-founder of Basecamp, which is a software as a service company. So they build project management tools, and they're based in Chicago, unlike your typical, other companies who are based in Silicon Valley. And it's by design, as you will find out if you ever read this book. But I wish everybody to read this book. He's basically built the ultimate business, ultimate company to work for, where you could, in essence, work for that company, even as a millennial, like us millennials apparently hate working in one place forever. He's built a company that even a millennial could work at forever, just based on his attitude towards work. So I've read 2 other books of his, Rework and Remote. Remote, I read the digital copy on Kindle. So Rework. Remote, I listened to on Audible. Rework is about how to redefine how we define work. And Remote was talking about how do you build a company that has employees that work not from one central place, so they could work from home, they could be working from different states or different countries than where the headquarter is based, and how do you manage that? This one kind of brings those 2 together, and he's written a 4th book, that I never knew until I was doing some research on him recently. So at some point in time, I'm gonna listen to or read that book. So in It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy Work, he's basically talking about this company's been around for 20 years, and these are all the lessons that we've learned, and this is what our culture is about, and I loved it. From the fact that he said that we are not a family, we are a business, but we are a family-orientated business. Their staff do not work on weekends, they do not work post 5 o'clock. So they work from 9 to 5, and that's it. So just really, really so many gems of wisdom came out of that book. I listened to it twice. I only counted it as 1 read though on my Goodreads challenge, but it was just so good I had to listen to it twice. So that gets 6 halos, like 5 doesn't quite describe what that book did for me. And will continue to, I have shared it with so many people. Even before I finished it, I was sharing it with people, and I will re-listen to it again this month. I loved that book so much. Right, then book number 4. Yeah, finally got to finish this one. Kingdom of the Blazing Phoenix by Julia C. Dow. So this counts as book number 4 towards my Goodreads challenge for the month, but also I guess that took me to 16. But also book number 2 of my YARC 2019 challenge. So this, as I mentioned in my previous wrap up, I read Forest of a Thousand Lanterns, which was a reimagining of the evil queen from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it was the evil queen's origin story. It was such a brilliant book. And this one, Kingdom of Blazing Phoenix, is Snow White, the reimagining of Snow White. No seven dwarfs, but one dwarf. And just such a great book. I devoured this book. Again, just a reminder that what she loves to do, I don't know if you can see, is that she likes to do the whole thing of these are the characters, these are their names and where you meet them, and she puts the pronunciations there so you know how to pronounce them. And I like that it's in the front, so you can always, I used to just quickly slide back if I was wondering if I've pronounced this name correctly, or I couldn't remember where this person came from, and just to get an understanding. Just such an easy read, so well described, but not over described. You know, some of these fictionals, you know, people get into the way they describe things, you kind of are like, I don't even know what we're talking about now. You lose track of where we are. But I could imagine I was in all those different places in the grasslands. I could imagine the high grass in the deserts. I could imagine the desperation for water in where all the different places. You know, we also got to see the lanterns and the forest and the battle scenes. And it was just such a great book. And this one definitely gets 5 halos. Nothing about this that I could ever want to improve. She's coming out with another book, Song of Crimson Snow, something like that. Sorry, I will write it somewhere here what the correct name is, but it's not quite part of this series, but it is based in the same universe. I'm really looking forward to it. I really am enjoying her writing, Julia Sutell. And this was, you know, a Forest of a Thousand Lanterns was her debut, and this is, you know, her follow up to it. And she's just such a great author, and I'm so glad I came across her. I follow her on Instagram and stuff, but she's just so brilliant. So those are all my books for that I read in March. So now I have to make up and try and read 7 books. In April, there is a long weekend, Easter weekend. I have no plans for Easter, so I'm trying to see if I can read 2, maybe even 3 books in that long weekend. Weather's also kind of cold this weekend, so maybe I can even finish a book this weekend. It would be really great to get me on track, because it's the 6th of the month already, so I need to get going. So first book I'm trying to finish is Radical Candor. I started reading this book in Feb. I really should have finished this book in Feb. I don't know, I'm just struggling to finish it. I am on page 76, which book that's got only 232 pages. I really should be doing better than this. It is a book, and I've already given you what this book is about in plenty of other videos, because I was meant to finish them even in March. But in essence, it's a book on how to, as a leader, how to have crucial conversations with your staff, and how to do it in a way, or how to lead your staff in a way that you actually get those results that you're looking for. Right, then this book, Beasts Made of Night by Tochi Onyebuchi. So I've been dying to finish this book. I started reading it in December. It was supposed to be one of my 50 books that I finished in December. I got to page 36 of sorry, I probably should have read all this stuff beforehand. Of 290, of just under 300 pages, so I'm still quite a bit to go, but not too long. The writing is relatively small, and it was actually very enjoyable, the first 36 pages. So I want to finish it this month. Fun fact, Torchi and Julia Sidao are actually very good friends. They constantly tagging each other on Instagram stories. So I think that's part of the reason why I'm like, okay, I finished Julia Sidao's books, let me finish Torchi's. And he's got a second book after this called Crown of Thunder. So if I finish this now, then I could read Crown of Thunder for May. And then it kind of feels like I'm still with the group of friends. Yeah, I'm part of their squad of writers. So Beast of Night, I have described this in my previous to be read list because I thought I was going to read this last month, but I actually didn't even think of picking it up. In essence, it's kind of, I think it's based in Nigeria. They don't really say so far, at least where I've gotten to. But in essence, it's in this big city, I assume Lagos-like city, where you have people who are from a lower class who have either come to the city to make money or just live in, have always lived in poverty. And they end up having a skill where they're able to eat sin. They become sin eaters. So the wealthy, the really uber rich, have sin, and then they get these mages, like kind of wizards, who come through and remove their sin physically from their souls. And the sin, depending on how bad it is, takes on the form of some kind of beast. Then these sin eaters come, they kill the beast, they consume the beast, and when they consume it, it becomes a tattoo on their body. And yeah, so it seems like a very interesting book. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what it's all about, but for me, it's fascinating because it's fantasy based on an African continent, which is what I'm writing about. So great research for me and what I am planning to do. And book 3 that I'm planning to read this month is The Broken River Tent. I've also described this in the past because I was supposed to have read this, I think, in February or March. I can't remember which one I hoped to read it. The author, Putumi Tabeni, is actually a friend of mine. I wrote this book in May last year when it came out, so I'm a little bit more than a little ashamed that I have not finished this book yet. So I'm planning on finishing definitely this month, come hell or high water. And in essence, what this book is about is Putumi's means of giving us a history about a particular chief, Makoma, about his life, through a young man who is somehow connected to Makoma. So this young man basically goes on a journey. He is very westernized, a very westernized African man who I think his father dies, and on his way back to see his father ends up in, I assume, a tent by the side of the river and starts having these hallucinations where he actually goes back in time and communicates with Makoma, and we get to learn about him. So very, very excited to actually read this book because I love historical fiction. And there's only 308 pages, so I really don't have an excuse to not finish this. So maybe Easter weekend, those are the 2 books that I make sure I finish. Then I think, what number am I not on? That was 3, so this is number 4. Ubuntu in My Bathroom by Eusebius Makaiser. So Putumi and Eusebius then add to my African authors that will take me. I'm on 3 now, that will take me to 5. So this book is the book that has been selected by our book club. As I mentioned, I'm part of a book club, Inception Book Club. Last month we read, oh my goodness, I just realized I didn't do a review of this book. I'll do that last. Apologies. All right, so last month, I'll talk about last month's book. But anyway, so Eusebius Makaiser, Ubuntu in My Bathroom, debating race, sexuality, and other uncomfortable South African topics. So Eusebius is, I don't know if, I get worried about people referring to themselves as an activist. I don't really know what an activist is. Are you someone who actively works in the community where you start things that change people's lives? Or are you someone who activates people's thinking? I don't know. So I guess he would describe himself as an activist. I'm sure he would. But I guess in the back here, he says he's a political and social analyst. He's also a radio talk show host, and a bunch of different things, right? So he's somebody I follow on social media, somebody who can influence a lot of things from a political perspective. And so our book club chose this book because we've managed to get him to come to our book club. I will talk about what happened last book club just now. And so he gave us the option to either have our book club, which would have been next week, on the 13th of April, but everyone voted for the 4th of May. So got a bit of time to finish this book, but I also have a second book that needs to be read for May, for our book club, or our actual May book. So that's why I want to read this book in April. That was when I was supposed to have read it. I have absolutely no expectations. I don't know really what this book is about. Eusebius McKaiser is openly gay and of colored descent. If you're South African, he's an African. He's, a very outspoken, open person. So it's really, really interesting to read about what his perspectives are about this book. So he's written several other books besides this one. So I don't know if this is a biography or just maybe a memoir. I will let you know in my catch-up video what I think about it. Right, and then the last book. So that took me to 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, that's not the last book yet. Book 5 is going to be an audiobook, and the audiobook is going to be The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I just listened to a podcast that he's just done recently with Tim Ferriss on the Tim Ferriss Show, and I was like, wow, this guy's pretty badass. I really liked how he approaches writing, and I found it very inspirational for me. So I thought, let me actually read one of these books. I've watched plenty of his adaptations of his books. Like I've watched Stardust so many times, really enjoyed that movie. I've watched Coraline, I didn't realize he wrote Coraline. American Gods, I never really got into, but it is something in the back of my head that I do want to watch. And then Good Omens apparently is also coming out as a TV adaptation. So I thought I'd start off with The Graveyard Book, and it's an audio because Tim Ferriss said it was his favorite audible book that he's ever, or audio book that he's ever listened to. So I thought, okay, let me try it out. And I know I'm missing another book, sorry, so I just want to look at my list. Oh yes, Descendant of a Crane. So Descendant of a Crane, I do not have a physical version of it. I ordered the digital version of it. The book only comes out next week on the 9th of April. And it's by Joan He, not sure how to pronounce her surname, it's H-E. Came across her through Vicky Who Reads as well as Julie Seidel. So she's an Asian author, an American Asian author, and it's a book about power. A young lady, a princess, suddenly becomes the queen when her father dies. Dies mysteriously, sorry, one of my neighbors. And unexpectedly, and so it's about how does she handle this power when she's suddenly thrown into it, and her life's also at risk. And it's based in China. It's from a Chinese perspective. I don't know if it's like an epic or what decade it's in, but I'm really interested to see what. I have no clue and no expectations on it, but that is going to be book number 6. So I might read that a little bit early because that comes out on the 9th. I got a digital version of it because I tried to pre-order it because it's a pre-order. The physical version, and people didn't know. I'm just like, this is going to be too complicated for South Africa. So I decided to get the Kindle version of it. Anyway, so book 7 is Dumpling. I don't know if I'm going to get to it, but I bought this book earlier this year. It's not adapted into a movie on Netflix. So I'm very, 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 very excited to read this first, then watch it on Netflix. I might need to get a VPN though, because I haven't seen it on Netflix for South Africa. I have to get a VPN to watch it in the American one. But I don't know if I'll get to it. 7 is quite a task. But, if I read 3 books during the Easter weekend, and that then allows me to just read 4 more books normally. So, fingers crossed. Right. And now to review Misbehave. I am so sorry. So this was the 5th book that I read in March. This was our book club book. We read this book, and the author, Malebu Sipodi, was supposed to come through, and she didn't. The upside to her not coming was we were allowed to be honest about our reviews. So Malou Sapodi describes herself as an activist, as a writer, and a lioness. She's the founder of Lady Leader, a platform that allows Black women to just be. She is someone who has survived sexual assault. She talks about patriarchy. She talks about body images, fat shaming. Talks about, family dynamics. Did I mention patriarchy? Racism in the workspace. Just all the different ways that we as women, especially African women or Black women in general, are, all the rules that we are given that prevent us from being us. From the aspect of not getting married by a certain age, not having children by a certain age, how many children do you have, in terms of getting an education, being great in bed, but not too great because then you look like a hoe, being respectful to your elders, going to church, cooking amazing meals, being the best mother, an amazing wife, not challenging the status quo type thing. So she rides a motorbike, which is something I wanted to do when I was a kid. And I got onto a scooter in South Korea and I almost, well, I didn't almost die, just kind of fell to the side. And I think, how old was I? I was 28, so I was still quite young, but at 20, no, I was 27 turning 28. Still quite young, but old enough to panic. So I suddenly was like, I hate bikes, I don't ever want, like, so I've still got to get over that fear. But I, reading that part about being a biker, I was like, I think I want to get back to it. So my rating for this book is 3 halos. And the reason it's 3 halos is, so it was a book that I learned so much about in terms of just reflecting on myself, reflecting on the decisions I've made in my life, and that it's okay. Some of the things that I've done wrong to my own family, in terms from the body imaging aspect, unintendedly hurting them and potentially causing some psychological damage. I'm not saying I did, but it just made me reflect on what role I potentially have played in that. And that us as family members need to start taking account for some of the things that we've said, which may unintendedly cause issues in the person. You might be trying to help them, but you say things in the wrong way, or you say the wrong things that have a lifetime impact on them. It helped me think about the case that we as Black women are always described as angry Black women, and we're so afraid of showing our emotions that we keep them in, and how bad that is for us. But that if we, like, why can't we be angry sometimes? Why are we, it's a normal human emotion to be angry, but the moment we are angry, we're described as being angry Black women, when actually maybe you did piss us off, maybe you did screw us over, maybe you did violate us, and so we have every right to be angry. And so it was a book that helped me think about myself, how I define myself, how I interact with the world, and how I'm tired of being something that I'm not, and I'm ready to misbehave. However, it was written like a journal. It was not very, it didn't really flow from one point to another. And maybe it's because I love fiction, and fiction tends to have a golden thread throughout it. Like, whereas I suppose with memoirs, the concept is just write down everything and people learn, and each chapter can be, and it's fine, but then I suppose it should have been written more like an anthology, I suppose. And that way there's an element of forgiveness that nothing flows. But yeah, so that's why I give it 3. All right, and so that is me. I don't know how long this video was, but I hope it wasn't too long. And yeah, so if you have read any of the books that I've mentioned, please write comments about it. If you have any suggestions for books for me to read, please let me know. As you can see behind, I have plenty of books that I still need to read. Some of these books I have read plenty for me to read in terms of physical books. I also listen to books because I get 2 credits a month or audiobooks on Audible. And Audible does this really cool thing where they have their own original books. So I also get another 2 original books every month. So that's 4 books on Audible. And then, of course, I also listen and read digital books, mainly because if I can't get the physical book really quickly, I just buy it on Kindle. And if I'm not enjoying the narrator on the audio book, then I'd rather go for a digital version of it. I know that I've mentioned some of these books that I listened to. I didn't like the narrators. In those cases, I think it was in the past where I just used to buy the audiobook without listening to the narrator first, and now I do that. And in particular with Measure What Matters, the reason I went with the audio was like I wanted to finish it really quickly. I was like, for sure, I will finish it. But it was definitely a book I probably should have read. Anyways, I hope you have a good month of April reading. Please also go check out my blog post, Charlie Reads and Reviews. I will link down below how you can get to it. I've only written 3 blog reviews, book reviews, so I need to, sorry, book reviews, not blog reviews. And so I need to up my game because 3 out of 17, I'm a little low on that. All right. Cheers.